Alright guys, this is still Exchange Menu website. On this our second playlist, we are titled it, the second playlist that is on exam tricks. So if you look at the board here, you see that the first, that is lecture 2 on exam tricks, right? Still Extreme Learning website. Now you may be asking yourself, exam is approaching, how can I really master all short forms of special angles in trigonometry? Now I want to look into trigonometry. Now to master all forms of special angles, now we want to look into both the sine, cosine, cot, tangent, cotangent, and the rest. Now let's pull a line here. Now I need a line here. Now bring out your book and you follow me up. Now this, I need another line here. Yes, I need a line here. I need another line, a third line here. Another line here. Another line here. Another line here. Now let's see, okay, now I need a long line here, another horizontal line here. Now let's see if it's enough. Let's have this to be x here. Let me have my sine here. This is cosine, that is cos. Let me have my tan. Let me have my cosec, that is inverse of what? Sine. Let me have my sec, that is inverse of cos. And let me have my cot. Okay, the line is enough. Wonderful. Now this is what we have here. Now I will still need the, okay, now no need of the line. Let me just have it straight. Now we'll have this to be what? 0 degrees here. I will need a 30 degrees as a special angle. I will need 45 degrees. I will need a, let's have a 60 degrees here. I will need 90 degrees. So we'll look at these major special angles and how to get them easily and quickly. Now let's have another line here. Just brief. This one is a shorter line. Now let's have a second one, but the second one there should be more space here. Now and then let's have a third one here. So well, let there be more space again. Now let's have this up here, a horizontal line too. Now what I'm going to do now, you watch carefully. Now make this x here. Now here you change it to what? 0, 1, 2, 3, and what? 4. You number it from 0 down to 4. Now what you do in this place is what? You divide whatever from this 0 down, you divide whatever is under the x column by what? 4. Now what am I saying? Now this is what? 0 divided by 4. 0 divided by 4 is what? 0. Okay? Now this 1 divided by 4 is still 1 over 4, right? So this one is what? 2 divided by 4. So that is going to give us what? 1 all over 2. Now this is 3 divided by 4. Now this is going to give us what? The same 3 divided by 4. Nothing changes. Now this is 4 divided by 4. 4 divided by 4 is going to give me 1. Accurate. Now the next thing to do in this column here now, this other one is for you to now find the square root of each of these numbers. Now you find the what? Square root of each of these numbers. Now the first one is square root of 0. Square root of 0. What do you get as square root of 0? Square root of 0 will still give you what? 0. Right? So the next one is square root of what? 1 all over 4. Square root of 1 over 4 should give us 1 over what? 2, because square root of 4 down is 2. So the next one is what? Square root of 1 all over 2. Square root of 1 over 2 should give us 1 all over root what? 2. Now next is what? Square root of what? 3 all over 4. Now this is going to give us what? Root 3 all over 2. Now next is what? Square root of 1, and it's still what? 1. Now it's time to replace our figures. All these things we get in this column now is what we're going to fix straight ahead in this place. So let's do that. Now this, the first one we have is what? 0, followed by what? 1 all over 2, then 1 all over root 2. Next one is root 3 over 2, right? Root 3 all over 2. And the last one there is what? 1. Now we're going to check this out later. Now let's have the next one now. What is cos? If you look at cos, cosine, the easier thing to do now is for you to start from this side. You write whatever you have from down here. You write it from the first one here. Now let's get there. The first number down here is what? 1. We'll put 1 over here. Next one is root 3 over 2. We'll put it up here for the cos. Root 3 all over 2. Next is what? This is the one that follows now. 1 over root 2. This is 1 all over root 2. Next that follows is this one here, 1 over 2. This is 1 over what? 2. Next that follows is 0. and then you put 0 here now. Wonderful. So this, we have gotten our sine, the special angle for sine and cos. Now let's go to find the special angle for tan. Now, if you look carefully, we had that tan is equal to what? Sine all over what? Cos. That is, we're going to pick all the values for sine and divide it by values for cos in this expression. Now let's pick the first value here. The first two value here now is going to give us 0 divided by 1. If 0 should divide 1, it's going to give us what? 0. Okay? 0 divided by 1 is going to give you 0. So the next thing now is what? 1 over 2. That is the next one here. 1 over 2 divided by root 3 over 2. Now when we solve it here, 1 over 2 divide what? Root 3. This is root 3 all over 2. Now when we reciprocate, this goes up. So we'll have now, this is now 1 over 2 multiply what? 2 over what? Root 3. So now 2 cancel 2, we're left with just what? 1 all over what? Root 3. Now let's plug it in here. Now this is what? 1 over what? Square root of what? 3. Now the next one is 1 over root 2. Now 1 over root 2 now divide by 1 over root 2. Now if we have 1 over root 2, let me put it here. Now this 1 all over root 2 divide by what? 1 over root 2. So reciprocate this 1 over what? Root 2 multiply by what? Root 2 all over 1. Cancel, 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 cancel. This is equal to what? 1. So we have that root tan 45 is 1, right? So the next thing we do here is to get our, that is to divide this root 3 over 2 by 1 over 2. So root 3 over 2 by 1 over 2 now. Let's clean this place very fast. Okay, let's have it here. Now root 3 over 2, let's divide it now. We have root 3 all over what? 2 divide by what? The next, that is 1 over 2. 1 over 2. Now reciprocate this root 3 over 2 multiply by what? 2 over 1. 2 cancel 2, we're left with what? Just what? Root 3. So this is now what? Square root of what? 3. Now the next one is what? 1 divided by 0 is infinity. It's unreconcilable. So we're done with finding the tan for what? All the special angles we listed. The next thing is to find the what? Cosec. And what is cosec? Cosec is what? Inverse of what? Sine. And then how do we find the inverse of sine? That is the same as saying 1 over 0, right? So this is the inverse of sine. Now 1 over 0 is going to give us what? Infinity. The same infinity. Next is what? 1 all over 1 over 2. 1 over 1 over 2 is going to give us just what? 2. Next is 1 over 1 over root 2. 1 over 1 over root 2. If we, let's solve it here. This is 1 over 1 over root 2. Now let's have it to be like this. 1 divide 1 over root 2. Now you still reciprocate. You have it to be what? 1 times what? Root 2 over 1. The answer is still going to be what? Root 2. So let's put it there. This is now root what? 2, right? We are getting there. Now the next thing now is what? 1 over this root 3 over 2. Now 1 over root 3 over 2 is going to reciprocate it, and then we're going to end up with what? Just 2 all over what? Root 3. It's just the inverse, right? Next is the inverse of 1 is still what? 1. We are done with the cosec of all these special angles. Now let's go to sec. Sec is what? 1 over cos. That is the inverse of cos. Now what's the cos? This is cos here now. Inverse of cos here, that is inverse of 1 here is still 1. So 1 inverse is still 1. Next is inverse of this. That is root 3 over 2. It's now going to be what? 2 over what? Root 3. You inverse it. Now next is what? Instead of 1 over root 2, it turns to root 2 over 1. And root 2 over 1 is still what? Root what? 2. Next is we have 1 over 2. This 1 over 2 is same as what? Reciprocate. We have it to be what? 2 over 1. So 2 over 1 is same thing as what? 2. Next is what? 0 over 0. I mean 0 now, this now inverse, right? So this inverse of 0 is still, that is still 0, right? So let's look at inverse of 0. When we inverse 0, we're still going to get what? 0. So here we have it to be infinity. It is unreconcilable because it's more like inverse of this. That is to use this 1 over this, right? So 1 divided by 0 is still what? Is irreconcilable to infinity. So the last thing to do now is to find our cot. And cot, what do we say is cot? Cot now is inverse of tan, right? So let's look for cot. Cot is inverse of what? Tan. Inverse of the tangent. Now let's look for inverse of the tan. Now this is the tan. Let's look for the inverse of this tan. The inverse of 0 here, okay, like we said earlier, right? Like, okay, now let's get down to it. Now, the inverse of 0 is what? Unreconcilable. Okay? Inverse of 0 is unreconcilable. It's 1 over this. Cannot be reconciled. Now, inverse of 1 over root 3 is going to give us just what? Root what? 3, right? Oh, this root 3. So the next thing to do now is here, we have this to be, okay, now this is what we have here. So then inverse of this 1 over here now is what? Inverse of 1 is still what? 1. Inverse of root 3 will give us what? 1 all over root 3. Next is what? Inverse of this. That is 1 over infinity. 1 over infinity should give us, so therefore 1 over infinity should give us what? 0. So this now how to find this. Sine, cos, tan, cosec, sec, and the cot of what? Special angles in trigonometry. Now do well to follow us in the next video. Now this is lecture 2 on this exam tricks, and we'll talk about trigonometry, and this find how to, we'll say this one is what? Finding these special angles using okay, this is supposed to be without using calculator. We're going to look at triangle and square later in the next video. So do well to follow us on that video. Thanks. Do well to subscribe.